you don't know me. Fighting in above and a far below me. You cannot catch me, cannot hold me. You cannot stop, much less control me. When it rains and pours, when the floodgates open, brace your shores. That pressure don't care when it breaks your door. Say it's all you can take, better take some more. Cause I know what it's like to test me. Had my shoulders pressed with that weight. Stood up strong in spite of that hate. Man, kids talk just like fuck on. But don't kill you, makes you more strong. And I've been waiting for it so long. Waiting for a light that never comes. I chase the sun. Waiting for a light that never comes. Waiting for a light that never comes. Waiting for a light that never comes. I chase the sun. Waiting for a light that never comes.
Hey guys, welcome to week 3, audio production techniques. Glad you guys can make it out tonight. Just to catch you guys up, for those of you that maybe have not been in our first or second week sessions, I'm going to go ahead and show you where we got the materials that you're currently listening to. We just played. This is a Linkin Park track called The Light Never Comes. And we're going to take you to the Indaba website. We'll show you where we got the materials, and then we're going to kind of give you a quick step up to how we got to be where we are right now. Before we get started, though, let's open it up and see if you guys have any questions. Some of them will probably get answered in tonight's session, but that's all right. Let's go ahead and air out any questions you might have. If they're class particular, maybe hold off till the end of the session, but if it has to do with what we're working with tonight, it's all fair game. Okay, Michael, you're saying you can't open up the zip files from the archives. There shouldn't be. I'm not sure which archives that you're referring to. If you're referring to the lecture sessions, those should unzip with no problem. But anytime I've ever had a problem unzipping a file, let me go ahead and show you guys a utility that I happen to use that's not the current Mac utility that you guys have. So this might address some other questions, but I'll go ahead and show it to you guys. There's an application called the Unarchiver, and this just really deals with any file that you have that won't unarchive very easily. And I've actually had issues, oops, didn't need the hyphen there probably, or the space. So here you go, this is a free utility, and it's what I've used in the past. In fact, sometimes I'll get files. I'll go ahead and copy and paste this to you guys. In fact, if you want, you can view it in the Mac App Store. You can see that it is a free utility. I'll go ahead and paste this for you guys so you guys have that link. But again, anytime I've ever had any issues unzipping files, and I have from clients that have sent me stuff, and for some reason the regular utility within the Mac doesn't archive all the time, this will get you through that process. So use that, and that should alleviate any issues you're having. So any other questions? Oh, Cliff. Good question. I don't think they actually give you that information. That's one of the reasons why we're actually steering you guys to use Indaba Music, because they actually do give you that information. So if you're trying to get something off of Beatport Play, you're going to actually have to use a feature called Identified Beat. Yeah, not a problem. If you want, I could give you a quick example of what it is you would need to do. Tell you what, I'll close out the current session that we're having, and I'll just show you, because this is kind of actually a valuable piece of information for any time someone's sending you files and you don't really know what the tempo of the file is. We'll go ahead and just show that to you now. So I'll quit out of the current session that we have. Let's create just a brand new Scratch session to show you this real quick. So we'll leave it 32-bit float 44.1 for our I/O settings, which stands for input and output. We'll set it for stereo mixed. I'll go ahead and save this. And since this is just a Scratch, I'm going to save it to my desktop, and I'll call it Trash Me, just to remind myself to throw it away later. And I'll go find some files here to import that the files you'll see that I'm going to import from actually already have that information, but I'm going to ignore it, and that way we can pretend as though we don't know that information. So let's go back, and I'll go back to my music folder where I know I already have some artist files, and we'll give you an example of that. Let's see here, Christina Aguilera. Well, it already gives us the tempo, but I'm going to go ahead and we're going to ignore that for now. So if I open up these files, in fact, I'm going to go ahead and use all of them. We could just use the drums because that's really going to give us the tempo information. The drums themselves are the backbeat of your song. What I mean by that is they are the backbone. They're the skeleton. They're going to be what everything else is playing around. They're playing to the tempo of the drums. So that'll be the file that we use. But for right now, I'm going to go ahead and choose Copy All. I'll go ahead and import these into my session. This will take a quick moment because it's going to have to re-render the files to the new bit depth and sample rate that I've chosen. It'll only take a second, and then we can give you a quick example of what it is you would need to do. And it's a good question, by the way, because a lot of times artists are just going to send you files, and they may not include that information. So this will get you around that hurdle with any project that you ever have in the future. We'll go ahead and import all the files to a brand new track. And it'll take a moment. You'll see the files render. They're actually rendering the waveform overview so you can see them. I'll give you a quick demo of the session so we can play it. You can hear what it sounds like. It's a pretty cool track. It's a Christina Aguilera track. I came in tonight to get you out of my mind. I'm gonna take what I find. Oh, yeah. All right, cool. So you get an idea what the song is all about. Now, we could actually use the first couple downbeats that were in the track itself. Let's go ahead and hide all tracks except for the drums, because that's actually what we're going to use. So I'm going to go ahead and make this track larger so you can see it. We could use the initial first hits to actually get the tempo information from, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cruise over here to where we have the actual drums themselves. So I'll just set my selector down in any old spot. We'll use tab to transient with this little icon right here. See the small arrow points to a small waveform? That's tab to transient. If I turn that on, notice when I hit tab, it tabs up, and we'll zoom in here. It tabs along to each drum transient. And if you use Option tab, it'll tab backwards to the last drum transient in the event you pass it up. So we'll call this the first downbeat. Even though at the beginning of the song we heard there are several hits there, this will be what we'll use to get our tempo information. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to let either 1 or 2 bars go by. If I hold down Shift while it's actually playing, it'll make selections from this point. Or I could actually just kind of listen to it and use tab to transient. Let's just listen to it real quick, and then we'll figure out where a 1-bar drum loop would be. In fact, I'll go ahead and just solo out just the drums. That way we're just dealing with drum information. So I can see right about here, we should have at least 1 or 2 bars. We'll listen to it again. And notice I have loop playback on. If I pull my transport up, you can see that the loop icon is on the play icon. If you control click or right click, you can actually set it for loop playback. And that'll be important because we want to hear the loop around point and count off the number of measures. I'll use Option F so we can actually zoom in and see what we're looking at as far as the waveform information. And let's give it a quick listen. I'm actually going to count it off. I'll turn it down slightly so you guys can hear me counting it off. 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 2. And notice that if we turn it up, you'll hear that I actually missed the actual turnaround point. I have a little bit less than 2 bars, and that's going to make a mistake here. So I'll play it out loud. You'll hear the actual loop itself. It's going to hiccup. In other words, it lets your ear know right away that I don't have a full 1 or 2 bar measure. It should be 2 bars, but notice that I'm missing it by at least a beat. And you hear that hiccup, so that means I'm missing it. So let's actually tab. I'm going to hold Shift and tab, which will make a selection up to the next transient, and let's listen to it. I think I'm still missing one extra hit, but let's listen to it. Yeah, and you heard that little hiccup where it didn't actually resolve the loop. So Shift tab again, and now I should have a perfect 2-bar loop, and we'll listen to it just to confirm. And again, your ear is telling you, I'm not just using my eyes visually, but your ear is telling you whether you've got the full 2-bar loop or not. We'll take a listen real quick. All right, cool. I've got a 2-bar loop, and so if we count that off, 1, 2, 3, 1 measure, 1, 2, 3, 2 measures. There you go, and you can hear the beat resolve. So what's going on in Pro Tools right now is Pro Tools isn't really smart enough to really understand what the tempo information is. So I have my default tempo set. So what's the default tempo of most DAWs? This is a question going out to the class. Yeah, 120 beats per minute. And in fact, if you take a look in the transport itself, it tells you that. You see there, it says 120 beats per minute. If we backed up in our timeline and we looked here at the tempo information at the beginning of the session, it would still reflect the same thing. I'm going to separate this just so we have a separation point, but if I hit return, you see you still got 120 beats per minute there. I'll tab back up to that little loop section there. Okay, so I know I have 2 bars here, but what does Pro Tools think I have as far as a selection? My ear tells me 2 bars, but Pro Tools doesn't think that I have 2 bars. And where would I look in Pro Tools for Pro Tools to be giving me the information about what it sees as far as a length of a selection that I currently have? I kind of gave it away by saying the word length. Yeah, the grid isn't right, so that was a good guess, but there's actually a location in Pro Tools that tells me right now what it thinks that I have for a selection of length. The area is called the Event Edit Area, and that's right up top here. See where it says Start, End, and then it says Length? Right now, Pro Tools thinks I have 2 bars, 1 beat, and 396 ticks. So it's wrong. It doesn't understand the tempo information. So with that said, what I need to do is I need to actually tell Pro Tools, no, this is where the downbeat of bar 1 should be. And it's actually not bar 1, but it'll still give us the information. And that feature is called Identify Beat. Command I will bring up Identify Beat. In the event you're not a quick key Clyde, that's okay. Let me actually show you where you can find the same information, but find it in a menu. You find it up here in the Events menu, and you see here you've got Identify Beat. So this is a really key feature because you remember last week I showed you guys the grid itself is one of the most important things that you'll have inside of any DAW. If I create an extra track here, just to kind of, oops, let's get out of here for a second. If I create an extra track, just kind of show off the bar increments, you can see that the bar increments are not starting at the downbeat and they're not ending at the end of our bar 2. And that's because the tempo is incorrect inside of Pro Tools. If we bring back up Identify Beat and we tell it, well, this should be the downbeat of bar 1, even though it's not bar 1, that's okay. We're still going to actually just assume this is 1. And if I just made a 2-bar selection, then what should my endpoint be? Remember that it starts at 1, and I have 2 bars selected. What would the endpoint be? This is a question for the class. Okay, a couple guesses there. We got some person guessed 2, somebody guessed 4, but it actually should be 3. And let me kind of explain why, because this is a common mistake. So if we take a look at this, and I'm going to go ahead and just make an extra cut here, and the extra cut is really just to kind of give us a reference point. So this extra cut here shows me this is bar 1, this is bar 2, and so the very end of bar 2 would actually be bar 3. We're not going into bar 3, but that would be the end point. So if I make this selection here and bring back up identify beat, the beginning should be bar 1, and the end point should actually be bar 3. Now remember, again, it doesn't go into bar 3. That's just the tail end. That's where it meets up with. So if we put that information in and we say OK, notice what happens. The grid has just corrected itself. Notice the grid there references we're at bar 1, we have 2 bars selected, and it ends at bar 3. And it gives us the tempo information. Notice here it says 101.9987. So if I were to round that back up, what would the tempo really be? Yeah, 102 beats per minute. Notice how accurate Pro Tools is. So whatever DAW they did this in, there could have been a little bit of swing as far as the quantization on the drums themselves. But we really should just assume that this is 102 beats per minute. So what I could do to fix this and to make sure that this works, let me kind of undo the work we just did and show you basically what we just did in a totally different way. I'm going to reference this by actually pulling up a click track. So if I create a click track, go to track, create click track. If I were to play this off right now, you're actually going to hear that the tempo is wrong. So in other words, I've undid the work that I just did. If we play this back, it's going to sound terrible. Let's make sure that our MIDI metronome is engaged. Notice that down on the transport, I'm turning it on and off by hitting the number 7. I'll turn on Keycaster here in a moment so you guys can see my keys. But now you'll be able to hear the click track, and it's going to sound terrible. Okay, so the click's wrong, and that's because it's letting us know that the actual track itself is not lined up to grid. Now, we just figured out what the tempo is, so let's back it up to the beginning of the session. We'll just hit return to bring me back to the beginning. And if I control click on our tempo information here, will tell us it should be 102 beats per minute. And now I'm going to go ahead and just play this from the actual start, because there's still going to be some issues here that are not going to be obvious. And this is a good lesson to learn, so I'm glad this question was asked at the beginning of class, because this is really going to be one of the most important things you figure out in any DAW is how to lock up the tempo in your session. So I'm going to play this for you, and I'm going to turn up the click track, but you're going to hear some issues. You're going to hear some issues immediately. And I'll go ahead and unsolo so you'll hear the entire song. And I'm playing the click track substantially louder so that this will really stand out as to what the issues are. And actually, if we zoom in, you'll see them as well. So we'll zoom in. If you notice that the actual grid itself, even though we corrected the grid by telling it the tempo, it's still off slightly. Let's listen to it, and you'll get the idea of what's going on. All right, notice the click is a little bit ahead of the track. And this is common as well to get files like this from an artist and they don't totally line up. And what's going on is if we go back and we look at the very first downbeat, there's some dead air if you zoom in. And that dead air is not just on the drum track. It's on every single track. So we need to fix that. Let me show you how we're going to fix that. I'll put myself into slip mode. And I'll put my selector at the very top here in the main timeline. If I click there, notice it's going to actually take me across every single playlist or every single track, because I have to actually delete that dead air, that bad timing at the beginning of these files. And then that should actually help us to line up the grid. Let's go ahead and do that now. I'll hit return. Return is going to, again, bring me back to the beginning. And if I use Shift and Tab with Tab to Transient engaged, notice I'll make a selection across all tracks. Cool. Now, if I delete this information, this is the bad information that's throwing off the timing of the track. Let's go ahead and let's put ourselves in shuffle mode. That way, when I delete it, all of my files will shuffle their way back to the left, in other words, back to the beginning of our session, and it should correct that timing issue that we've had. So let's go ahead and delete it. Oh, I think I did something wrong. Let's try that again. And delete. Okay, cool. Now notice that we pulled back up to the very beginning, the very first hit, and now if we go and we actually listen, this should have corrected our issue. Let's put ourselves back into grid mode, and let's go ahead and listen carefully to the file, and this should have fixed everything. Okay, the song is entirely locked up. Now, there's one other thing I showed you guys last week that we should really do to confirm that the entire song lines up. And what was that? For those of you that were hanging out last week, loop playback was a good one. We used that, but there's another point in the song that we should probably reference. So if it starts crawling away, yeah, we need to go to the very end of the song. And if the entire song is locked up, we'll know real quickly by referencing the end of the song as opposed to the beginning of the song. So let's go back down here to the end of the song. Notice I got myself in grid mode. I could actually stay in grid mode and then make a selection here. And if this is the end of the song and if this loops up, then our click track will reference it as well. To avoid any of the clutter of the rest of the song, I'm just going to solo out the drums. That way we actually can hear the click track with the drums. And if it's in tempo, then we'll hear it. We can also zoom into it, Option F, and we'll be able to see it as well as hear it. And I can tell just visually that it's going to work, but let's go ahead and listen to it. All right, there you go. So there's a valuable lesson. And the feature there that we just used was called Identify Beat. In the event that you have material that an artist gives you and you don't understand what the tempo information is, we showed you a very precise and accurate way of finding out what that information is. Notice also that we found some issues with the session as well. There was that little bit at the very beginning which threw the entire song off. That little small bit of information at the very beginning, and even that little tiny sliver that we zoomed in and had to slice off of every track, that was a really big deal in getting the song to line up. So that was a very well-placed question and goes right in line with what we did last week, but allows you guys to see with any material, you can now find out exactly what the tempo was with that information. Hopefully that answered your question. Does anybody else have any questions concerning Identify Beat? Excellent. How about any other questions before we get started on tonight's material? Okay, Michael's asking a question about having an issue trying to use punch record. Well, quick punch record, it's going to be easiest to do that if you have a full keyboard. In other words, a full Mac keyboard that has the numeric keypads, because 3 will actually start you recording, and spacebar would start your playback. So to punch in and punch out, it would just be hitting the numeric key 3. You could also do that by just going up, and if you hit play, you could punch in and out just using the record button. However, what you're actually asking about is a totally different issue. Right now, if I do what you're asking for, I believe I'm going to have the same issue. If I use Command and Spacebar, notice that what happened at the very top right-hand corner of my screen, Spotlight came up. And that's because I don't actually use Command and Spacebar, and that really has to do with a feature of the Macintosh. So this really isn't an issue with Pro Tools. This really had to do with some of the very first pages that probably none of us ever read, and that's the actual Getting Started guide of your software. In the Pro Tools Getting Started guide, which I totally understand, most of us don't read it because we're so excited to jump into either Logic or Pro Tools or whatever the new software is that you don't usually go back and read that information. This is a feature that's hijacked by the Macintosh application, and it's a feature that allows you to quickly find things within your Mac. However, inside of Pro Tools, it's now been hijacked for something that it was intended to be used inside of Pro Tools, but again, it's been hijacked by the Mac. You can actually disable this feature. Let me see here. A quick search on the net would actually let you know what that is. Let me click back over and get rid of Spotlight. And I Googled this for someone earlier today. I believe what I put in was Pro Tools and Spotlight. And a quick search, disable Spotlight indexing. So this will actually take you and it'll actually show you. Let me figure out which one of these. I found a quicker and easier way to disable this. They gave you guys a quick, here we go. I believe this was the link that I found earlier. Yeah, so this will tell you actually how to get rid of that feature. And again, it's not a problem with Pro Tools. It really has to do with an issue of your Macintosh and a quick key that has been hijacked by the operating system. So there's a link that'll explain to you how to actually get that to work for you within Pro Tools. And again, it's not a problem with Pro Tools. It has to do with the Mac operating system. Matthew Cardenas is asking, my Mac keeps asking me to upgrade to Mavericks. Should I, or has a problem been resolved? I have not upgraded to Mavericks simply because I'm in the middle of teaching you guys lessons, and the very last thing that I ever want to do is if I'm ever involved with a project, whether it's a paid project from an artist, or in this case, I'm an educator, I reserve upgrading my operating system until I know all of the kinks have been worked out. Let me give you guys another reference. I believe it's actually okay for you, but it just depends on what version of Pro Tools you're using. But let me show you where you should go that will always give you this kind of information, especially when you're dealing with Pro Tools. So here we are. I've just gone back over to the Avid site, and I'm going to go ahead and log into my account. And once I've logged into my account, I'm going to take you guys to a section called the DUC. The DUC is short for DUC, or DigiDesign's User Conference. I believe actually if I would have gone back, I could have probably accessed it without having to log into my account. Let's go back, because I think it was actually on the very first page. I don't even think I had to log in. And let me see here. There you go, the DUC and Pro Tools. Now, this will actually explain any kind of issues that you're ever having with Pro Tools. And this way, if, you'll become basically a Pro Tools pro just by kind of figuring things out right here. So I'm going to go ahead and post this link for you guys as well, that we have this for a reference. Because if we looked here, there's going to be a compatibility page that will explain to you what versions of Pro Tools are working with Mavericks and what are not. I think sometimes you can actually find it in the General Announcements tab, but I think there's also a compatibility page. I think in the past it was called Compato. Let's just go to that first posting then, General Announcements. Pro Tools 11 is now available. Let's try just Googling Pro Tools Compato. There you go, compatibility and upgrade information on Avid. Now, I'm not going to bother reading through this whole list for you guys because it'll be quite a lengthy conversation here because there's so many different Pro Tools systems. But you'll see here that it'll really spell it out for you. So the quick answer for this is, especially while you're in school here, reserve upgrading your operating system until you hear on FSO or from your teachers that it's actually okay for you to do this, because it could actually render you dead in the water. So when I'm ever working on a project, I don't ever upgrade my system. I don't upgrade my system because if it's already working, don't fix it, right? If it's not broken, don't fix it. So especially while you guys are in school, you don't want to paint yourself into a corner where you've upgraded your operating system, because trying to downgrade back to an older OS is really not a fun process. I'm going to go ahead and paste this link there for you guys as well. Somewhere in here, we will actually find, here we go. Here's our Pro Tools link. Of course, we have to go through and figure out what we have as far as a product, but just to let you know in the future, if you're ever having compatibility issues, that's the link you guys want to use. Cool questions so far. Any other questions before we get started this evening? Yeah, Matthew, this will pretty much give you anything and everything. I don't know if you saw that last list we were just looking at, but it's pretty in depth and letting you know what is compatible and what's not. For right now, Matthew, please don't upgrade. I imagine your Pro Tools system is working just fine. So if that's the case, there's really no reason to upgrade, especially since you have assignments that'll be due and things like that. It would really be bad if you upgraded only to find out that it's not compatible, because downgrading your operating system is not a fun process. It's not easy. You basically are going to have to get another drive, use Time Machine, and somehow get back to a previous version of your operating system. And it's just not really doable while you're in school. And it's frustrating as well. Any other questions before we get started? Good question so far, by the way. All right, cool. So what I want to do then is I actually want to take you guys over to Indaba Music and show you where we got these files. And then I'll actually take you over into Pro Tools, and we'll show you where we're going to get some of the loop files you're going to hear me use this evening. So here we are at Indaba Music. I'll go ahead and copy and paste this link for you guys. Hopefully you guys have already done this process, because as you can see, we're already into, this is now our third week. So if you have not picked an artist, I need you guys to go ahead and pick an artist. I'm going to need to log in. Okay, cool. So this is a free account. You guys, hopefully you've already done this process, but Indaba is a free website, and they give you basically 3 opportunities to download files from artists that they post up. So what you want to do is you want to go to the Opportunities tab at the very top here, and this will show you what the current opportunities are. You can see here, it has a banner at the top here, but I don't like using this banner. If you scroll down slightly, it'll basically show you everything that's available. So here we've got submit an original, so you don't want to do that. You'll be doing a remix. Here it says mix the performance. You don't want to do that, because again, we're doing a remix, not a mix. Here it's asking for original track. Again, you don't want to use that option. So here is the files that we're using. This is the Linkin Park that you heard at the beginning of tonight's class. So simply select this. You'll see that I've already downloaded these files. I'm not sure if it's actually going to make them available to me anymore. Actually, yeah, it does. There you go. Download all stems. In the past, if it had seen that you've already downloaded these files, then it's not going to allow you to download them. Now, notice you could actually download the individual stems, but there's no need for that. Simply download all the stems. And once they were downloaded, I went ahead and I renamed them slightly, and I renamed them basically the name of the artist and the song. And then I went in and added this information under FAQ, which stands for Frequently Asked Questions. If you scroll down, notice it shows us, it gives us the key signature of the song, G minor, at 115 beats per minute. And I actually added that to the name of the file. And I'll show you where I placed these files. We'll go ahead and close out of this Pro Tools session. That was fun with Christina Aguilera. And by the way, those Christina Aguilera files were files that were derived from Indaba as well. Now, when I downloaded the Linkin Park files, I'm just going to quickly show you what I did with them. I put them inside of a music folder. But inside my music folder, I've created several other folders just to keep myself nice and organized. I created an artist remix files folder. And inside of my artist remix files folder, you can see here, there is the Linkin Park files. Now, when you download these, it adds some other really weird numbers and kind of some other junk to it. And it also gives you some underscores, as well as everything is in lowercase. So I went ahead and labeled it like you would see with capitals for the artist and the song name. And then I added in that extra information. I added in the BPM, which stands for beats per minute, which basically is the tempo. And I also added the key signature. So that way in the future, if I ever want to work with these files just on my own, let's say, you're out of this class, but you want to go back and reference those files, you already have the information there on how to get yourself started. So that was basically one thing we did last week. And I'm going to go ahead and show you where we actually save the session, because this is where I just store the actual files for safekeeping. If we go back here, inside my music folder, I created a Pro Tools folder, and this is where I save the sessions themselves, which is totally separate from the artist files. And yeah, that means I actually have 2 copies now. I've got the originals, and then I have the Pro Tools session, which has a separate copy of the files. But that way, if I do something destructive, or if I really foobar the session, that's a technical term. You can look that one up, foobar. In other words, if I really grossly do something messed up to the files, I have an original copy of them for backup. So let's go ahead and we'll open up the Pro Tools session. Let's see here, and here is the session. All right, so Linkin Park, Light That Never Comes. You can see I've saved several different versions of it. Last week we got started by just basically importing the files. And when we imported the files, I imported them just the way they were. In fact, we'll show the full session. And for those of you that hung out last week, you'll remember that we went back and we created memory locations. Oops, I hit a track. And those memory locations, we created marker locations that actually show us how the song is laid out. And these marker locations also allow me to quickly zip through the song at the downbeat of where parts will happen. Now, the cool thing about this is the session can even be playing back. And when I click on a memory location, it's actually going to take me to that location. Small little Pro Tools error. I can also use my numeric keypad to quickly reference points in the song as well. So for like memory location 2, I would just do period 2 period on my numeric keypad, and it takes me to that location. Let me go and actually turn on KeyCaster so you guys can see my quick keys. And that way any of the quick keys that I'm using, you guys will be able to see them as I'm referencing them. Okay, cool. Now we're back over into Pro Tools. So if I want to go to memory location 5, period, and I'm immediately there. And by the way, you can do this while the session's playing back as well. So if a producer says, well, do me a favor, go to chorus 2, well, I can see that's memory location 7, period, I'm there immediately. So it makes it really quick and easy to navigate around the session. It's also going to fall into play with what you guys are going to see that we're going to do this evening, which is start to really put this song together. We're going to deconstruct it and put it back together. So let's kind of show you guys where we've gotten so far. And one other thing I need to show you before we really start diving in is where we're going to get these loop files from, because you guys have access to the same exact files that you'll see me using. So I don't want you guys to think that I have some special, really hot producer files. I have really cool files that you guys have access to as well, and that's off of your DigiDesign account. So if you go ahead and log into your account, and again, this is a little bit of a repeat from what you guys have seen at the beginning of the week, of each of the week, but just to make sure everybody's at the same exact spot. I'll go ahead and log into my account. Once you've logged into your account, you want to go to View My Product Details. Under View My Product Details, I'll show you where we're actually getting these files from. Okay, so under View My Product Details, if you go to this little download section here, it shows that I have Pro Tools 10. We go into the download section. Here are these files. All these that say Big Fish, these are all a bunch of loop libraries. And you'll want to download these one at a time. Otherwise, it might give you a download error. Or one of the quickest ways to get these is off of your original installation discs. There's an extra disc, a DVD, that has these loops on there. It'll be a lot quicker than having to download them from DigiDesign. But you're about to see me start using these files, so I just want you to be aware that the files you're seeing me use, you guys have access to as well. Good question here. Matthew Cardenas says, were we supposed to download the virtual instruments? You guys should have already had the virtual instruments installed when you downloaded Pro Tools initially, or whenever you installed it. So no, you shouldn't have to do that. If you find that you're missing your virtual instruments, it might not be a bad idea. I've only had, in the past year, I think I've only had maybe 1 or 2 students that didn't have the virtual instruments, but that was just basically because something weird must have happened in their download process. But no, you shouldn't have to download the virtual instruments. You should have them. And that's what we want to jump into today. I want to show you guys some really cool tricks. So we're going to first start off with these loops, and I already have a couple of them in the session that we're working on. And I already picked a couple loops out. If you guys remember from last week, I found a couple loops that I thought would work good with the song. So we'll go back and we'll actually reference those files. First of all, I want to play the song for a quick second so you guys hear the difference of where we've gotten. So we'll go back and just reference the song. You guys actually heard this at the beginning of the class. I'm not going to play the whole song, but I want you guys to hear that we've already substantially changed the song just by changing up the percussion. So let's go back and play a portion of it.
Now you don't know me, lightning above and a far below me. You cannot catch me, cannot hold me. You cannot stop, much less control me. When it rains, it pours. When the floodgates open, brace your shores. That pleasure don't care when it breaks your door. Say it's all you can take, let it take some more.
Okay, cool. So basically, that's the original song, and all we've done so far to this session is we've gone in and created markers. So let's fast forward to basically where we left off last week. So I'm going to go ahead and open up last week's session. You can see I saved multiple versions of the song. That way, in the event that I mess something up, I had a way of stepping back and getting back to where I previously was. Just another safeguard that you might want to consider whenever you're working on a project, to, as you go along, and you'll see me do this tonight as well, is I get to little chunks of things happening in the song and I'm happy with where I'm at, I'm going to save a version of it. That way, if I really louse something up and I don't like where I'm at, or I really mess something up, I have a way of getting back to where I liked the work that I was doing. Let's go ahead and open up version 3. In here, you're going to just hear some drum loops. But these are drum loops that I went and I found, and I decided they worked really well with the actual song itself. So we're going to go ahead and listen to these. So again, these files, we can find these files. Notice I used my workspace browser. And for any of this information that maybe is glossing over you, you may have to go back and reference last week's archive sessions. All of our sessions, including tonight's session, will be archived and they'll be available for you underneath the announcements section. And it generally takes me about 24 hours to get that posted up. But so if you feel like I'm skipping ahead too far, there is information that you can find that basically archives all of the work that we've done. So there's 4 hours so far. There's week 1 and week 2 that'll really show you where we've gotten so far. If you wanted to skip week 1's archive, you probably could, because I believe we started work on a different song. And then the Linkin Park song popped up and it was just too good. I couldn't pass it up. So I decided to start all over. So basically, we've only gotten 2 hours into this project, but let's jump into it for this evening. So I picked a couple files from here that I really liked. And then I went back and I just dropped them into my session. And we'll go ahead and just listen to this one right now. I've got 2 different files here. We'll just kind of listen to what they are. So all I've done is just basically import them. And we're now just going to listen to them. Cool, just a real simple drum beat. And that's going to be really cool, I think, for the intro. What I think I might actually end up doing, too, is notice the kick and snare are all by themselves. We don't have any hats or anything like that. So I actually picked this loop for a reason, because I'm probably going to go back and hijack just those pieces and put them into the song where I want them to go. I just think they're really good, nice, strong kicks and snares. If we listen to the loop that you have above that, a little bit more information going on here. I believe there's some hi-hats. You can kind of see there's beats in between the kick and snare, so it's probably going to be our hi-hats. Let's listen to it. Cool little drum loop. If we go ahead and we listen to it in the song, I'll paste it out throughout the song so you can hear what it would sound like in the song. And if we're going to do that, I might as well mute this one. And we'll pop up the entirety of the song. Scroll down to where our drum loop is at. And I actually liked this loop, but I don't think I'm going to use the entire thing. In fact, what I'm probably going to end up doing is hijacking the just the hi-hats out of it and using the hi-hats with this other kick and snare piece. But before we do that, let's paste it through the song and see what it would sound like. So I'm just going to duplicate it 3 times. Command D to duplicate. Shift return to select that, and then Command D several more times. And I just pasted out this drum loop for the length of the song. So if you wanted to hear the song now with a new drum beat, we didn't do too much other than get rid of their drums and add in our own drums, but here you go. Here's what it's going to sound like. And I also added in a couple other drum loops. So you probably heard those come in. So right off the bat, just by changing up the drums, we've really changed up the performance. The original drums that were in the song was just basically a 4/4 house beat. And here we've now added in a really cool little pattern here. It's more of a breakbeat pattern, but it definitely changes up the feel of the song. So what I want to do with this here is I actually want to use this and use it to its advantage, but I noticed it sounded pretty cool once these other drums dropped in as well. Let's actually pull these further up into the song so it actually kicks up over here into the verse. And we're now mixing together basically two different loop patterns. We've got this first initial pattern, and then actually three different patterns there. So three different drum loops happening. We'll go back and give this a listen to. And I'm just going to listen to the verse section. Notice I've highlighted up at the very top here, just the verse. So we're listening to three different drum loops. We'll be hearing two drum loops at a time because notice they drop out, but I think they'll end up complementing each other. Let's take a listen. Okay, so one of these patterns I figured out right away just didn't sound good, and that's this bottom pattern. As soon as it jumped in, it was just too crowded. So I'm actually going to delete this. At some point I liked it. I think maybe I wanted this for the bridge. So since we've already got the sections nailed off here where I can see them, I'm just going to slide this down here to wherever our bridge section is. There it is. Now I may or may not use this in the bridge section. We'll duplicate it a couple times. Oops. Just going to select it and duplicate it a couple times just so it fills in that whole section there where we had the bridge happen. To zoom in, you can see that basically that just happens during that bridge section. Then we got pre-chorus and then the chorus comes in. Again, I may or may not use that, but what I do like so far is what we've already got going with this pattern here with basically these two loops. So let's call this, we need to start naming these. Notice how they have real generic names. And that's going to be difficult for us to kind of keep things individualized for where we like it. I already know that I like these patterns here together. Let's go ahead and just listen to them again. And it might not be a bad idea to just solo these guys out and see what's robbing from what, because there's already some frequency masking going on. And what I mean by that is we have two different kicks going on, two different snares going on. Some points they're working together and some points they're not. Let's hide all tracks except for those two tracks. That way we can get a better idea of what it is we're actually looking at. We're actually looking at this guy here and this guy here. And if we blur these up, you'll see that there are actually kicks and snares that are happening at some of the same exact times. And that's causing a little bit of confusion because some of the kick frequencies are the same exact frequency. So typically what I usually will do is I'll actually start filtering out some of these parts or even taking out some of the kicks and snares. So let's just take a quick listen. I'm actually going to back this up so we're hearing this pattern first and then we're actually hearing them together. And I'll solo them out. That way we're not hearing the entire song. What I like about this is this one simple pattern that we have going here. It sounds pretty hot. Then when we add in this guy makes it sound pretty tough. So this is where the intensity starts happening with the drums. So what I'm going to do is, since this is really intense, I want it to stand out a little bit more than it is. And it's being robbed by some of the same frequencies that are happening here. So what I'm actually going to do to the drums here is I'm going to go start sucking out some of those frequencies. What am I going to do? We'll go to Audio Suite. I'll go to my EQ. We'll go down here to a 7-band EQ. And on the 7-band EQ, I'm going to drop out some of the low-end frequencies. So we're just going to sweep those off. And if we go back and we listen to it, I'll let you preview it. So did is it just dropped off the low end. One of these kicks, you can see that really fat kick where the waveform is, right here, where the really fat kick is, especially here and there. I basically sucked away the life of those kicks. I'm also going to take away a little bit of the snares. Snares are going to live in this area, so I'm going to walk this down a little bit and walk it a little bit further. And you're going to hear that basically the hi-hats are going to stand out now because the kick and the snare has been turned down dramatically. We'll play it back. And I could probably take a little bit more of that kick away. So we're just going to sweep that off. You're still going to hear it. It'll be a little bit of a knocking sound, but you're not going to get any of the low end, which will allow this other pattern to actually stand out a whole lot more. We'll go back and listen to it. It basically makes the kick and the snare almost like ghost hits. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to render this down. You'll see the waveform got a little bit thinner, and those big fat kicks, remember this, I'll undo it so you can see. See where those big burly kicks were at? They're no longer there. We've kind of gotten rid of that big thick kick sound. So since I've done that, let's actually put that back at the beginning of the song as well. Option drag it. And then let's have that happen throughout the entirety of the song. We'll duplicate that out, getting rid of that fat kick throughout the song. And now if we go back and we listen to it, you're going to find that these two loops are actually going to work together a whole lot better than they did originally. They're not going to be frequency masking each other as badly. Let's take a listen. Okay, so let that larger loop really have the intensity that it needs while just taking the hi-hats and allowing those hi-hats to ride behind. And those little kicks and snares, they're still in there, but they're acting more like ghost hits so that the actual pattern isn't being masked. Now, since I've already decided that this is going to be basically what I'm going to use for my hats, and I'm using it at the beginning of the song, let's call this intro loop. That way I know what it is. Cool. And anytime that we have any of the intensity of the song kicking in, we're actually going to use this heavy loop. So let's just go ahead and call it heavy loop. I'm going to go ahead and capitalize that. I like caps. Cool. Now what I want to do is, since that's the intensity of the song, I know that the intense part of the songs are going to be chorus sections. So let's go ahead and let's put that in the chorus sections. So I know the chorus section is going to resound. And notice that I'm using my markers to just see where this goes. I can see that the chorus goes from here all the way up into the next verse. And if that's the case, we're just going to put this at every spot where the chorus is. This is a really good example of why we use the markers in the first place. This is really going to allow you to deal with song arrangement in a really efficient manner. I'm going to use Option and drag it. Option dragging is going to allow me to copy it. And then I'm going to use Command and D just to duplicate up until I see the next verse starts. Cool. I'm going to do this every section where I see a chorus happens. Option drag it. Here's my pre-chorus. Let's go ahead and drop it where the chorus section is. Let's see here. All right, cool. Now I like that. That's going to sound pretty hot. And if you want to go back and we'll just give you a quick audition. We already have stuff happening. There's one other loop that I wanted to introduce, and that was something, it looks like I already called something else intro loop. So it looks like I already have something called intro loop, which was just that kick and snare. What I'm going to probably end up doing is, again, probably hijacking these guys for other parts. But why don't we do this for now? Let's go ahead and duplicate these out until the chorus section kicks in. And I'm going to do this again for every section that we don't have the chorus. And I'll play this back for you in a second and you'll get an idea of what we've just done. We've just kind of added a lot of meat to the song just by dealing with the arrangement of drums. Oops. Needed to Option drag that just to copy it. And then Command D to duplicate. And we'll find any other sections we don't have, like the outro. Option drag again, and then just duplicate. So let's take a listen to what we got so far. And this should actually sound pretty beefy. Let's take a listen here. Now, I don't know if that translated very well at home, just the via that you guys are having to listen through um, through the Mac microphone. But let's do this. Let's pull up our memory locations window. Let's go to verse 1, and then let's unsolo this so you can hear what it sounds like with the music itself. And by the way, we're not just going to use loops. We're using loops to get ourselves started, and then we're going to go back and reprogram our own drums here in a moment. So let's give a listen to, in fact, I'm going to back up and begin the song so you guys can get an idea of what it sounds like with the drums we've just added in.
Now you don't know me. Light in above and far below me. You cannot catch me, cannot hold me. You cannot stop, much less control me. When it rains, it pours. When the floodgates open, brace your shores. That pressure don't care when it breaks your doors. It's all you can take, but it takes some more. See no place like to test me. And my shoulders pressed with that weight. Still up strong in spite of that hate. That gets tough, it's like a full time. Don't kill you, makes you more strong. And I've been waiting for it so long.
All right, cool. Really cool progression. I like what we've got so far. Does anybody have any questions about what they've seen so far? There's a question about keeping the song structure. For right now, I'm probably going to keep the song structure. I'm going to show you guys some other creative things we can do to change up what we already have for song structure. But you're more than welcome to change the song structure, and we'll probably get more into changing that next week. But you're welcome to keep the same structure or change it if you want. If you don't want, if you want to have a longer intro or longer outro, or change up the verse and chorus sections, you're more than uh, uh, welcome to do that. So good questions. Yeah, there was a question here about the different tempos as far as the drum loops. What we did, you may remember from last week, is whenever you're pulling from the Workspace browser, remember we used the Workspace browser because it allowed me to audition drum parts in tempo before we even imported them while playing back the session. And what that allowed me to do is hear whether it was going to work in the actual session before I even imported them. But the main thing here is this little metronome symbol at the very top. If that was to remain checked, when I pulled these in, they automatically time stretch to our current session's tempo. So that actually saved me quite a bit of work. It almost made these loops act as though they were Apple loops. They automatically worked at our session's tempo, even though the original loops are different tempos. So yeah, these actually have different names to them and different tempos, but that's one of the cool things about a DAW, and it allow you to utilize loops that were not in the same original tempo. Somebody gave me a message, something about naming of my intro. Okay. Yeah, okay, sorry. Somebody's just correcting me. That was really polite though. Yeah, it looks like when I when I named these slightly messed up. T and R were messed up here. Thank you for whoever pointed that out. Nomenclature. It'll get you every time. Shortcut for the workspace browser, somebody asked. And notice that I went ahead and resized my window so my workspace browser is always there, because I just kind of prefer to work that way. But to get to your workspace browser, it is option semicolon. So option semicolon, and this will bring up the initial workspace browser, and then you'll have to navigate back to wherever your files are at. But I went ahead and stretched out my workspace browser, and I kind of always leave it up. That way I can go back and reference files. Okay, cool. I kind of like the loops that we already have, but sometimes just straight up using loops is really considered by a lot of people to be cheating. And in fact, we did a lot of creativity in finding loops that would work, and we did a really cool job of placing them in the song as far as structure. I probably want to go back and listen to the bridge section and see if that bridge is going to work. I have a feeling it might be kind of funky. But I'm not going to worry too much about it. I think it was this other loop here, and it might fight with these here, so I might actually need to change that up. So in other words, notice here I've got two other loops that are working in tandem. Let's drop these out and listen to this, but then I want to move forward and actually show you guys how to create your own drum loops using the virtual instruments that Pro Tools has to offer. Let's give it a quick listen though. So we'll jump off here at this verse and see what we got going. Yeah, we'll probably come back and actually swap that out. But you get an idea here of what we did with song structure, and everything we did was based off of our markers, and it allowed us just to slide parts over into their places and kind of get a rough scratch and really change the momentum of the song. And so far, the only thing we've done is really just change up percussion. Let's do this for right now. Let's actually abandon all of the great drum work we've just done, and let's start from scratch utilizing our own drums. And then what I'll probably end up doing is coming back and reincorporating some of these drums back in here. But for right now, we're just going to go ahead and hide these tracks and make them inactive. Let's do this while I'm here, though. Since I started naming these other parts, it'd be a good idea to finish naming this right here. And we're going to call this, well, let's see, what was that section here? That was my bridge, so we'll call this bridge drums. Okay, now we've got these really nice drums, and it's a shame that we're going to go ahead and abandon them, but this happens a lot in a project. Sometimes you might want to just try something out and make sure that you're not heading off in the wrong direction. And I think we already had a good direction, but incorporating your own drums would be a whole lot more fun sometimes as well. So let's do this. We could just go ahead and hide these and make these inactive for right now. So what I'm going to do is I'll right click and I'll say hide and make inactive. I believe you could also control click to do the same thing. And notice if I try to bring these tracks back up, you'll see that they are grayed out and the names of everything is italicized. So anytime you see a track that's grayed out, that means it's an inactive track. And anytime you see anything with italicized names, then we know that that's going to be an inactive track as well. So we can hide those from view. We no longer need to worry about those. And let's actually show you guys how to make your own drum patterns and incorporate those. And the first thing we're going to start off with here is a virtual instrument called Expand. Now, I'm going to start off showing you kind of the old school way of dealing with MIDI tracks. And the old school way, we're going to flip around here to the mix window. We'll create a MIDI track. And I'm also going to create a stereo an aux track. Now, this is kind of the old school way, and I'm doing it this way intentionally because we need to actually learn a couple quick lessons about the different track types and how they actually interact with one another. So we'll go ahead and do that now. We're going to create a MIDI track and an aux track. Now, the virtual instrument will have to go on the aux track itself. So we'll go over in here, we'll pick an instrument, and I'm going to choose Expand. There we go, Expand. Now, this is a virtual instrument that comes with Pro Tools, so all of us have this. So again, I'm not using anything that you guys don't have, and this will allow us to dive into our virtual instruments. That was not a good sign. Hopefully Pro Tools does not crash. Excellent. I'm going to actually save my work now, and let's do a save as version. File. We'll do a save as, and let's do a version 4. Yeah, what you guys just saw with that little beach ball there, that's potentially a really scary thing sometimes. If you haven't saved your work, that usually means your application's potentially about to crash. In this case, it really meant that it was having to pull from some more memory, and Pro Tools was kind of choking there for a second. It's just because I have so many different applications that are running right now that it's actually utilizing more memory. Okay, so I've got my virtual instrument now, but I've got a keyboard here, by the way. You guys can't see it, but I do have a keyboard set up to the side here, just like you guys would have. The only thing that's different with my keyboard is it actually has 49 keys as opposed to the smaller keyboard that you guys were shipped with your launch box. Now notice when I hit my keyboard, I'm not hearing anything. If I record ARM, the MIDI track, I see MIDI information, but I'm still not hearing my instrument. Now, the lesson here is that even though Pro Tools has these 2 tracks up, it doesn't know what it's supposed to be triggering. In other words, MIDI, here, I want you guys to finish this sentence for me. You guys have probably heard this a lot already in Full Sail. MIDI is not, and then fill in the blank. What is MIDI not? Yeah, MIDI's not audio. So then if MIDI's not audio, then it is controller information. In other words, when I hit a key, even though it's sending MIDI information, it doesn't know what it's supposed to be controlling. And that'll be taken care of in the output right here, down at the bottom. So if I look in my output, notice the expand is there. I just simply need to assign it. So when I assign the expand and then I hit a key, okay. Now we've got control of our virtual instrument, of the synth itself. But notice our MIDI is happening on one track. The audio is happening on the aux track. So when I told you guys earlier I was going to do this in the old school way, I'm going to show you actually how to do this all on one track in a moment, but it's kind of important that I show you the difference on 2 separate tracks, because there is a track type inside of Pro Tools that will actually handle audio and MIDI on one track. So what track is that I'm talking about? You guys, if you've done your reading, you should have already run into this. Excellent. Yeah, an instrument track. But it's kind of important that I show you the difference between the 2 first. That way you understand that MIDI and audio are not the same. And here is a good example of that. Again, my MIDI is happening on the MIDI track, and the audio is coming out on the aux track itself. Now, this virtual instrument we're using called Expand is a really cool little virtual instrument. It basically takes all of your meat and potato items like pianos. We've got piano sounds in here. We also have synthesized sounds. There's some drum sounds. So think of this like a Triton or a motif or, any of your big hardware pieces by Roland or Yamaha or Korg that would actually have a little bit of everything inside of them. This is basically like that, but it's a virtual instrument that'll have all kinds of sounds. So let's go ahead and let's pull up some drum sounds. Notice up top here we have presets. So I'm going to go to my presets here, and it's already set for factory default. But let's go in here. Let's find drums. And let's see. I'm going to let's try the dance kit for right now. Not really sure if this is going to be the kit that I want to use or not, but that's the kit I'm going to use. Notice it loads up drum sounds for me, and if we flip around to my arrange window, and I'll hide the virtual instrument real quick, we're actually going to do these drums on the MIDI track itself. So I'm going to back up to just maybe a 1 bar for right now. Actually, we'll do 2 bars. That way you can see full 2 bars. I'll set myself for, we can do 16th notes if we want. That's fine. And then now we need to basically create a MIDI pattern. But your MIDI tracks actually default to being clips view. So to input individual notes, you'll need to change to notes view. And notice now we have a piano roll. And with a piano roll, if I click and drag, here's all my drums. So if we scroll down here to the bottom, I know my kick should be on C1. So, all right, that's a little industrial for me. Probably not what I want to use. So if that's the case, I'm probably going to need to pick a different preset, because that's a little bit too industrial for what I plan on doing. Let's see if there's another kick. There might be another one right above it. Nope, that's it for right now. So let's go back. We can actually show the instrument from within this view as well. So let's do that. Let's show the inserts. which will show me the virtual instrument. That way I can click on it. I don't have to go back over to my mixer window. And let's just switch the kit real quick. Let's find something else. Let's try... No, I have no idea. I'm really just going to probably pick something here and hope that it sounds good. Let's try New House. Yeah, I'm fine with that. We'll get started with that for right now. And if we don't like it, we can change it later. Now, to create a real simple pattern here inside of Pro Tools, I'm going to grab the pencil tool, and we're just going to pencil in some notes. And the very first drum pattern, you guys are going to laugh at it because it's going to seem so hokey. But I'm going to put it on the one. Oops, I missed it. Oh, there's a couple different kicks here. Let's try that one for right now. Put it on the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4. And so you're probably thinking about right now, this is going to be pretty boring. And it will be, but it'll get you started. And I'm showing you a really simple way to make a drum beat, and then we're going to switch it up here in a second. And we'll make it a little bit more interesting. And let's go find the snare. So the snare, I'm going to put it on the 2 and the 4. Let's go find it. That's a snare, cool. And then let's go find a closed hat. We'll throw in some hats. That's not a hat. And that's a closed hat. Now, I'm going to actually switch my pencil tool. Let's delete that. Now, notice double-clicking on a MIDI note will delete it. We'll go find the line tool. And what I'm going to do is, the reason I picked the line tool is the line tool allowed me to make a string of notes. So if I click and drag, there. So now I've got hats. Now, again, if I play this back, you're just going to think I'm hokey as can be. But let's play it back so you get an idea of what this sounds like. I just stretched it out by using Option F so you guys could see the notes that I've inputted. And if we play it back, again, you're going to laugh, but we'll switch it up and we'll make this pretty cool. Let me solo this out so you guys can actually hear it. We'll go ahead and solo safe, which is hold Command and click on the solo. That way we're just hearing just the information we just inputted. That actually sounds a lot like what their original drum beat was, and it's just basically a simple 4/4. But remember, the pattern that we just created earlier actually was more of a breakbeat pattern. So let's do that. Something else I noticed is anytime I'm hearing hi-hats that are just consistent like that, it's to me, it's a little bit boring to have 16th note hi-hats going throughout the entirety of the song. So I'm going to go back and delete some of these. I'm just going to delete every other one. And then maybe we'll change it up slightly here towards the end. In other words, what I mean is if we go ahead and first just delete every other one, you'll notice it makes it a little bit more interesting, but still it's not going to be super impressive. Just made it a little bit more simple. I'm going to go back and probably edit those here in a moment, but let's actually get a little bit more of a funk feel going on. So if we double up a couple kicks at the beginning and start moving some of these kicks around a little bit, something along the lines of this, I'm going to go back and listen to it, and I might have to move some notes around again. Notice too that the notes themselves are kind of thin. If I wanted to actually fatten that up, you've got a zoom feature up top here so we can make them thinner or fatter. And that's just changing, it's not sound-wise, it's just showing you the reference. That way we can pencil them in a little bit easier. But if you play this back, it should give us a little bit more of a breakbeat feel. Now, I didn't like how this kick actually landed where the snare was at because it sounded a little choked to me. We could probably just move it over a little bit. Get our grabber tool, move that buddy over, and it might not be a bad idea to actually spread these out and move this one over too. Let's listen to it, and I can actually do it while it's playing back. I'll just select the notes. All right, cool. So a little bit cooler of a pattern. And let's go ahead and let's duplicate that over. And on this next pattern, since we already kind of have a cool pattern going, let's actually just alter it slightly. So we'll just change it up. So I'm just going to move some notes around, and we'll get a little bit of a different feel this time around. And let's see what we got this time around. And to combine these together, and it'll give it a little bit more flavor. All right, cool. Now we combine these two patterns together, and we've really just changed up our pattern pretty drastically. And remember, we started off with just a standard 4 on the floor, which, by the way, I'm a huge house head. So somebody mentioned, I think it was Cameron, said 4 on the floor is never boring. I love 4 on the floor. I'm a house head myself, but we're just trying to give it a little bit more variety because some people feel that the 4 on the floor is a little sterile. I happen to love it myself, but since our other pattern that we're using with the loop, it is a breakbeat pattern. I kind of want to give you guys something that resembled something close to what we had going on. Now, one other thing I typically like to do as well is I probably would change up my hi-hats slightly. What I mean by that is throwing in a couple extra hi-hats here and there. Like, see where we have some space here where there's not kicks or snares going on? Those are always really cool spots to actually add in some extra hi-hats. So there'll be a little bit of a hi-hat roll through that section. And maybe even here we don't see a spot. Maybe, yeah, we'll just try that for now and you'll get an idea. It just kind of gives it a little bit more flair through that section. We'll listen to it. If we go back and we actually add these two patterns together so you can actually just hear them, it gives you an idea of where we just came from and how we got there. Okay, cool. Now notice where all of a sudden we've got our own drums going on, and it's really kind of sounds cool. So why don't we just, for giggles, why don't we pace this out throughout the entirety of the song and see how well this works with the song. We can get rid of these guys at the bottom. We don't need to see these because they're not in use. Except for my aux and my MIDI. Sorry about that. And I'm just simply going to select the MIDI notes and duplicate them out. That way we can kind of hear what's going on. So if I do Command D, which will duplicate 3 times, and then Shift Return, notice I have a selection of 8 bars. So this will quickly allow me to duplicate these out, Command D, for the rest of the song. Voila, I got drums. Let's actually listen to it with the song and see how good this is so far. I'm going to go ahead and turn up my drums as well because I noticed that typically these aren't going to be quite loud enough for the rest of the material. But let's give it a listen and see what we've done with our own drums to date so far. Cool, you guys get the idea. I'm actually pretty satisfied with those drums. I think they sound pretty good. I'm glad I switched up the kit because I think the kit's a little bit more appropriate for the song that we've chosen to remix here. Does anyone have any questions with what they just saw? Because I'm about to dive in with how to actually get these recorded to audio. Is everybody good with what they just saw? All right, cool. Hopefully you guys appreciate the way I started off with just a simple 4/4 and then move some notes around to give it that breakbeat feel. The 4/4 is so easy to program in. You just put a kick on the 1, the 2, the 3, and the 4. Snare goes on the 2 and the 4, and then you can put in your hi-hats wherever you want. Generally, they're going to be either a 16th, but you notice when I deleted them, it really becomes more of an 8th note pattern. But it's really, really simple to do. And when you see it that way, the first time somebody showed me it that way with a real simple 4/4, and then they moved the notes around to get that breakbeat, a light switch went off in my head. I was like, oh, that's how they do it. So hopefully you guys just got a little bit of a taste of that as well. Okay, cool. Let's talk about recording these down to audio, and then we're going to have to start moving on to some more synthesis, some more features before we wrap for the evening. So I tell you what, let's do this. Let's hide everything. Let's pull up just the tracks we're dealing with here. Let's go back over to here in our mix window. Now, if I wanted to record this down to audio, how would I do that? Now, I'm throwing this question out to the class. How would I do that? Create an audio track. And then I heard somebody talk about a bus too. Oh, that was a good one. Patricia, I said I could bounce it. Yeah, I could actually solo this and bounce it, and that actually would record it. That was a good one. I haven't had a student say that in quite a while. Nice. Let's go ahead and follow with tradition, but I like that. You're thinking outside the box, Patricia. Patricia, nice one. I'm going to go ahead and create an audio track, and since my source, which is my source? Should it be stereo or mono? And the answer to this question is really, where's the sound coming from? Nice one, Matthew. The audio on this aux track is a stereo track. So then we want to have a stereo track to record it to. Okay, cool. Now what do I do to get this recorded down as audio? Somebody else mentioned, Matthew Cardenas says we could bounce it. Yeah, but I'm actually trying to record this internally inside of Pro Tools right now. Somebody mentioned it earlier. It had to do with a bus, but what would I be busing? Where would my bus go? How would I do that? Matthew Cardenas said MIDI 1. And Matthew, while that's a good guess, it's actually not right. Now, I'm not meaning to point you out, but this is a very common mistake, so I'm actually glad you said that. But remember, MIDI's not audio, so it's not going to be the MIDI track. What track would it be? Yeah, it's going to be the aux track. All right, so I'm going to bus the output of my aux track. I'm just going to use any available bus. I'm just going to use 11 and 12 just as an example here. You can use any available bus. It doesn't matter. Now, what does matter is on the track that you're going to record to, it needs to be a matching bus on the input. So notice if I go look at my buses here, it needs to be bus 11 and 12 on the input. Now, I'll record ARM the audio track. We'll solo it out as well. That way we got just the tracks that we're dealing with here. That way we're not hearing the entirety of the song. And remember, I only did, what was it, I think 8 bars? Or did I do... I only did 4 bars. So what I need to do here is just select 4 bars inside of Pro Tools. Using my backslash key, notice backslash will rotate through my start, end, and length. So I'll just navigate down until at 4 bars. So it just selected, actually, I think I said 2 bars, not 4. Let me do that again. Sorry, guys. Just select 2 bars, and then we'll go ahead and record that. So I'm just going to hit 3, which will start me recording. Okay, cool. Now, I recorded it down to audio, and that's all well and good, and you guys will need to know how to do that. However, I've really painted myself into a corner over here. What if I'd like to have a little bit of reverb or delay on any one of the individual instruments? Remember, so far, I've got 3 different instruments. I've got kick, snare, and closed hi-hat. So I've kind of painted myself into a corner here. Matthew, I'm not totally sure exactly what you're asking. If you don't mind, let me hold off one second here because I've moved on to something else, but I will come back to your question. Just please hold that one. I'll come back to it. So producer says to me, hey, that's great. Let's put a little reverb on the actual snare. So how would I do that? How would I put reverb on just the snare? Okay, Cameron says I should route each sound to a different track, but that's going to be hard because take a look at my MIDI information. My MIDI information is all on one track, so how would I pull this off? That means the source signal that's sending out the information is all on one track, so there's really no way to pull this off right now. If I try to add reverb to the snare, what will invariably happen? Remember, reverb has to happen to an audio piece. You can't add it to something MIDI is not audio, so I have to add it to this. But here's my snare here. If I add reverb to my snare, inevitably, what would happen to the rest of the sounds? Matthew actually came up with a really good workaround. I actually could cut out the snare and put that on its own individual track. That would be another workaround. However, I'm going to show you a different way. I like that. You're thinking outside the box. That was an excellent answer, by the way. What I really need to do, let me back up here and let's just delete this track. I'm not going to be dealing with this track, so we'll go ahead and delete this. What I really needed to do is I needed each of these MIDI parts to be on their own individual MIDI track. And then I would need to record them, each one, to their own individual audio track. Now, there's a way of specifically doing this. First of all, let me do this. I don't really need, since the drums are repeating themselves, I'm just going to hold Shift, Option, Return, which will select all the way back the opposite direction. Remember, when I hit Return, it went back to the beginning of the section. This way, I hit Shift, Option, Return, and that way it actually selects to the end. And we'll just delete this information for right now because it's all just a repetition. It just repeated itself all the way down throughout the song. So let me just deal with what we can see here. That way it doesn't ogle the mind or boggle you at all. So what I want to do here is I'm actually going to use a feature dealing with MIDI information called Select Split Notes. And this will be important because what this will do is it'll separate all the individual notes to their own individual MIDI track without me having to copy and paste them individually. So you'll find this underneath your event. You want to go to Event Operations, and then you want to go to Select Split Notes. Now, under Select Split Notes, I'm going to ask it to not just look at C2 to C3. I'm actually going to ask it to look at all of the notes. And then I'm going to ask it to split the notes. And I'm going to ask it to cut the notes to a new track per pitch. What this really means is, if we look over here, I'm going to close out this window for a minute. When they say per pitch, the kick is on its own individual key. We can actually hear that because I have the output routed here. Let's put this back to just built-in output. So since the kick is on its own key, that's its own pitch. Then you have the snare on its own key. That means a new pitch on the piano, right? It's a totally different key. So remember, all of your MIDI operations, you have to have the notes selected that you're trying to get them to work on. Option 0 actually open up the same windows. Notice here, I'm skipping around a little bit of information, but if I go to the Event menu, I go to Event Operations. Quantize is the very first feature, and notice what the quick key is. It's Option 0. So I know we're not quantizing, but if I hold Option 0, it brings up my quantize feature, and if I hold Command and use my arrows, this will take me through all of the different MIDI operations that we're going to use. So I'm just showing you different ways of achieving the same thing. I showed you how to find it through the menu, go up to Events and Event Operations, and then you can also do it by using the quick key and then pull up Select Split Notes. So I'm going to do all notes. I'll actually split the notes and I will cut them out of this track. I could have copied them, but we'll cut them to a new track per pitch. So when I hit apply, watch what happens. It just cut them out of the original MIDI track. They're now no longer in that track. Now they're on their own individual MIDI track. And that way I can play them back. And if you look here in the mix window, the sound is still coming. So here are the individual MIDI notes, but the sound is still coming from the original aux track. So now to get these recorded, then basically I need to have 3 new audio tracks. And in this case, we're going to create mono tracks because mono tracks are going to be for individual drum hits. Individual drum hits don't have to be in stereo. When we had a drum loop, yeah, that needed to be stereo. But in this case, we're going to have individual drum hits. So if I was to mic up my kick drum, I would typically probably only use one microphone. So it's not really stereo. So it would be a mono track. So let's create 3 mono audio tracks. And let's name these. Kick, K-I-C-K, snare, S-N-A-R-E, and CL hat for closed hats. Okay. Now it's time to actually get these recorded to their respective tracks. Here's where it gets a little bit tricky, and let me explain what I'm talking about. If we take a look at what's going on here, we can actually delete this first MIDI track. It's not in use. You can see here, before we delete this, you should always confirm before you delete a track, make sure nothing's in use on that track. You can see there's no information there. We'll delete that track. The reason I'm telling you to confirm that is because deleting a track is not an undoable feature. You can't Command Z. So, okay. Now here are the 3 MIDI tracks we're dealing with. The audio is coming from the aux track, so I need to route out of our aux track. We'll use bus 1 because remember, we're all going to be sent to individual tracks here. And we can actually make these all bus 1 because we're going to have to solo these out and record them individually. So I'm going to hold down Shift and Option. What that'll do is it'll clutch the tracks. That way I can go route this to be bus 1, and all of these tracks, since I've clutched them, I won't have to do them individually. So they're all now bus 1. Cool. Now what I need to do is basically solo out each piece. So let's take a look here. The kick track is the bottom track here. So then that's the track that needs to be soloed. And then I want to record arm this track. And then let's make a selection for the length of the track. You can do it. It doesn't matter which track you do it on, but that way it'll just start and stop based off your track length. Now let's also solo that out. Let's go ahead and solo it out. So we're just seeing that piece for right now. And let's go ahead and hit 3, which will start the recording process. All right, cool. Kick is done. Now repeat the process for our snare. Here's the snare track, unrecord arm, and we will then record arm the snare track, hit 3 to record. Cool. Rinse and repeat for the hi-hat track. Solo it out, unrecord arm our snare track, record the closed hat track, and then hit record. All right, cool. And there we have our 2-bar drum loop that we've then created from scratch inside of Pro Tools. Coolio. The next thing that I'd like to attack here is, let's see, what are they using for their bass line? The next thing I kind of want to do is throw in, actually, it looks like we're kind of running late on time, but let's see if we could actually attack this. Now, by the way, I don't really need the MIDI tracks anymore, do I? And I don't really need the aux tracks anymore either. Now, I could delete these tracks, but there's no reason to really delete them. They're not really going to be in use anymore. So we could just then hide them and make them inactive. And the reason I'm not going to totally delete them is because I might decide later that I want to do something with them. Before I do that, let's go ahead and we'll do File, do a Save As. And I'm just giving myself backing up destinations. We're at version 5 now. Okay, cool. So again, I could just hide these and make these inactive. I'm just right-clicking because I have a mouse here, but I believe you guys can control-click as well. Oops, it's actually... Oh, I see what's going on. On a MIDI track, by the way, there's no reason to make it inactive because it's not in use anymore. But if I go here and say hide, make inactive, there you go. Okay, now we can paste these out for the entirety of the song, and now I can apply individual effects and EQs because I have them as individual tracks now. And notice that this is the way you want to work. Next week, we'll end up making an audio subgroup out of these elements. But let's see here what we have for bass. I'm going to go ahead and hide these tracks. Actually, let's paste these out for the duration of the song, just for right now. We'll get the lead vocals in here so I can see how long the song is. I'm going to duplicate it 3 times, Command D, 1, 2, 3, Shift Return, which will select back the beginning of my duplication, so that way I can just Command D out to the end of the song. Excellent. Looks like I'm over by just probably 1 bar, but not a big deal. We'll deal with that later. Okay. So again, now we've got our drum parts, our individual drum parts. This allows me to turn them up and down now as well, whereas before they were all mixed together on one track. So now I can treat them independently. Okay, let's take a look at our bass line. And I'm probably going to leave drums in for right now, just because that way we can hear our drums with our bass line. So let's pull up the bass line. We'll get rid of lead vocals for right now, and then let's resize this. Looks like bass line is really only happening later on in the song. So let's see what they're actually doing for bass line. Tell you what, I am going to show you one other feature. Since we already have our drums, I'm pretty happy with the way they are for right now. I'm going to select them, and I'm actually going to create a group out of them. Command G, and we'll call it drums for right now. And the reason I'm doing this is now that I've created a group out of them, if I want to turn up my drums, now I can just do it. Basically they're all grouped together. So if I need to basically hear my my bass line a little bit more, we can actually turn the drums down, zoom in on bass line, and let's take a listen and see what the bass is actually doing. Because basically what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back and replace the bass line, but I'm going to replace it by mimicking the bass line. In other words, following kind of along with what they've done. But let me see what they've done first. So let's listen to it. Wow, really cool, intricate drums on this. And this is a really cool new kind of dubstep sounds that you're using. And I think we're going to find it pretty hard to replicate exactly what they did, but we can try to pull it off or maybe even put our own spin on it. So what I want to do is I want to create a new virtual instrument track. And here's where, remember earlier I was explaining to you guys that an instrument track is actually a hybrid of two tracks. An instrument track is actually a MIDI track and an aux track combined together. That's what I'm going to create this time. So let's create a shift command in, gives me the new track dialog. Let's create a stereo instrument track. And here's where you're going to see MIDI and audio happening on the same track. And this is one of the reasons why I showed it to you in the old school method first. And that was because it's important to understand MIDI's not audio, and it's really easy to get tripped up and think that your audio is coming from the MIDI track, especially when you're now going to see it happening on the same exact track. So if we zoom in, I'm going to change my grid resolution here to 1 bar increments. And let's start off with just 2 bars because it's kind of intricate sounding. And let's actually just listen and see what they got going on here. Okay. If I were to be really honest with you, this is actually several different virtual instruments that they've actually combined together into one track. That's why you're hearing such a variety on their bass line. And this is a real common method that you would hear on something like a drum and bass or a dubstep track. Now, I'm actually not going to try to totally replicate what they've done, but I am going to try to create my own sound that might be something like what they've done. And this will serve to give it our own flavor anyways, so let's go ahead and do that. We're going to call this bass A because I might end up creating several different bass lines. Let's just call it bass-A for now. And let's pull up a virtual instrument that all of you have inside of Pro Tools. So here's my bass track. Let's go ahead and go down to a new virtual instrument that we haven't seen yet. It's going to be called Vacuum. Here is Vacuum. Now, Vacuum's a really cool virtual instrument because it replicates, I'm going to save my work. Anytime you start adding virtual instruments, see we have that little beach ball? That's important. You go ahead and save your work. That way, if anything were to happen, we crash the session, I know I've saved up until this point. We're not going to lose all the great work we just did. Now, Vacuum is a virtual instrument that tries to replicate analog synthesizers. So you're not going to find any pianos or any French horns or any natural instruments. It's basically synthesis. And I know you guys are already familiar with synthesis, so this will give you a good idea of what this is. Now, the very first patch, notice I'm not hearing anything. Now, remember, I put a virtual instrument on that track, but I also have it soloed out. Now, whenever I created this virtual instrument track, in this case, it actually did some of the routing for me. Let me show you here. Whenever I created the virtual instrument, because it's an instrument track, it already understood, hey, you want this to be routed. So the MIDI on this was already routed. I simply had to solo it. And now we've got the sound of the instrument there. Now, I noticed that their bass line, if we listen back, it's at a much lower register than what I'm at. So I'm going to need to go down an octave. So, and I believe I just pretty much went and found the note there. And I'm just going to go ahead and flip back over and start penciling this in. Now, I might not even really be happy with this sound for right now. Now, I just picked the very first patch that they have, but there's all kinds of patches in here. So I might want to actually go and pick something that's a little bit more appropriate. I believe the factory default tends to be a lead. So let's go listen to the bass lines here. Now that I'm in the bass zones here, we can actually use the plus and minus keys. I'm just clicking on plus and minus. I tell you what, for right now, I'm going to go ahead and actually just go back to the factory default, and I'll show you why. I can actually tweak that factory default and get it to be something more like what I'm looking for. So I'm going to use this right now just because it's a really raw sound. But once I start penciling this in, I think you'll get an idea of what I'm going for. So notice I pulled up the bass track right next to my virtual instrument track, and I did this intentionally. That way I can actually see the waveform. Seeing the waveform is going to allow me, by the way, I'm not a piano player. I don't profess to be a true musician. I'm really more of an engineer at heart. So for those of you that don't really play an instrument, this will kind of help you out as well, because typically I can actually just kind of noodle my way through, and in the finished product, nobody's going to hear my errors. We're going to go back and find and fix any of the errors I do. So if you see me kind of going off the cuff, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to go in here. I changed it to eighth notes. The reason I changed it to eighth notes is we can actually, if we zoom in here, you can see some of this is done in eighth notes, and some of these are 16th notes. See how that's little stabby notes through there? Those look like they're going to be more like 16th. And in fact, if we change the grid resolution, you can see, yeah, those notes were hit in a 16th note fashion. So this looks like we had a held note here, and then several little 16th notes. And if we go back and listen to it, you're going to see that that's exactly what happened. Let's put this in a 1 bar increment, 1 bar. Zoom out so we can actually see. And notice I'm doing the old method here of, I know you guys have maybe heard this analogy before. How do you eat an elephant? Question for the class. How do you eat an elephant? Well, you eat an elephant 1 bite at a time. Yeah, you guys already nailed it. So what I did is I just narrowed myself down into a 1 bar increment. That way I can focus in on what's going on in that 1 bar. So I'm going to end up using the very same note in which I'm actually hearing 3 different bass lines happening here. And if I wanted to, I could create 3 different virtual instrument tracks and pencil those in. But for right now, just to get a general idea. So I found the note here. The note I'm playing is right here. Oops. Let's go back. And the reason that happened, by the way, is trying to resize the track. I'm in Clips View. Remember, your MIDI tracks default to Clips View. Let's switch over to Notes View. And the note that I was playing was this. It's just down an octave. So right here. And basically, I just found that by ear. It actually gave us the reference. I believe it was G minor. But there we go. So pencil in the note and stretch it out for the length that we see. And then add in some stabs. Let's see there. Stab, stab, stab. Oops. And then another long note. And then a stab, a break. You see the break there. And a stab. Now, we'll end up picking up the pattern here in a moment, but let's just mute out their bass line for right now. And again, it's not going to sound exactly like it because they used 3 different bass sounds. And I could do that here in a moment. I'm not sure if we'll have enough time to actually get to that this evening, but we'll probably have to stop here in a moment. But just giving you an idea, and I basically did this visually. I found the note by ear, just hearing, by listening to what they're playing, and then I penciled it in, just kind of looking at what they had going on. This looks like it might be a break here in this note. Not sure if it is. It looks like it could be, but I'm not going to worry about it for now. Let's just play it back and see what we got. Okay. Now, the reason it sounded like one long held note is because even though we had little short breaks in the notes here, they weren't long enough breaks. Or if we go back to the virtual instrument, the vacuum itself, we probably need to adjust the release time on this. So if we bring down the release time, it might actually give us the attack. The decay on this probably needs to come down as well. Sustain is really held way too long on these. Let's bring the sustain all the way down. And this actually should give us more of a feel like we were hearing. Let's take a listen. could also trim off the end of these notes by a 16th, and it'll give us a little bit more of that staccato pattern. In fact, if I even shorten these a little bit more than our 16th note, we'll definitely get a little bit more of that pattern in there. The reason we need that break is just those notes are just slurring into each other. These guys, we can leave those alone. All right. Well, I'll tell you what, guys, we've got about 5 minutes left of class, and it wouldn't be fair for me to just keep noodling away at this bass line. We are going to work on this more next week. I want to go ahead and show you guys some more tips and tricks on the bass line, and I probably will pull up a couple other synths and actually intermingle these notes with different synths. Sorry about that, guys. The cat is getting in on the action here. Let's go ahead and open it up for questions. Any questions you guys might have? Yeah, Juan, not a problem. I will be up on AIM or iChat tomorrow, but I'll go ahead and launch it right now. Do me a favor and hold off messaging me right now because your messages will actually be broadcast the entire class. Wait until I've signed off, and that way if you have personal matters or something that's a little bit more not related to tonight's lesson, that's okay. I'll be here for you on iChat. Just wait because actually I had the voiceover set for iChat, so if you were to post your message right now, the entire class will actually hear it because it'll actually come out as audio, as voice, text to speech.
Logged into audiovisionary at ne.com.
All right, yeah. So if you guys don't have questions, you're more than welcome to log off. I just want to hang out and see if any of you guys have questions about anything we've done so far. Yeah, Cliff, you're more than welcome to use any materials you have, even if it's outside of what I've already shown you guys. Yeah, listen, guys, thanks for hanging out. If you don't have questions, you're more than welcome to log off. I appreciate you guys hanging out tonight, and we had a really good session. I feel like we got a little further in the song. Next week, we're going to build on our bass line here, and before you know it, we'll have the song wrapped up by the end of next week. Yeah, Patricia's asking, can you chop up the original stems? Absolutely. In fact, hopefully we'll have time to do that next week. I also would like to show you guys some reverse reverb on the vocals and things like that. I'd like to show you some really cool editing tips and tricks as well. We're going to get into some mixing next week. So, yeah, good times. I had a good session with you guys tonight. I had a lot of fun. Yeah, Andre, you're more than welcome to change the arrangement to whatever you like. Not a big deal. Change the arrangement in any way you want. As long as you keep it creative and it flows well and it sounds great, that's awesome. Coolio, any other questions you guys have? Looks like we've got most of the questions out of the way. I'll stay live here in a moment. Well, guys, if there's no more questions for the night, I really appreciate you guys coming out and hanging out with me this evening. I had a good time showing you guys around Pro Tools and showing you some interesting ways of creating a creative remix. And I really look forward to seeing what you guys apply to this project. Of course, you don't have to use the song I used. However, your song choice is kind of limited right now. It's basically this song and the RJD2 song, but you're more than welcome to remix that one as well. I think this one has a little bit better of a song structure to it. It might give you a better idea of what a real pop remix would be like, but either way. Well, thanks for coming out tonight, guys. I will see you back next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Have a great week. And if you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to hit me up. And I am going to stay live here via iChat. I'm going to type in my iChat address, AUDIOBISIONARY at me.com. Thanks, guys. Have a good evening. I'll see you back next week. Good night.